Let's take you to this now. The city of Johannesburg has adopted a new bylaw that prohibits residents from posting CCTV videos of crime events on the internet. The bylaw further says all CCTV cameras with a view of public spaces, such as a road, must be approved and registered by the city. After this, the camera cannot be moved, updated, or even taken down without a prior approval. The footage cannot be shared on the internet or WhatsApp groups. Experience has shown that such footage shared on social medias have led to arrests of perpetrators. We've now roped in legal analyst Elton Hart from University of Johannesburg's Law Clinic to weigh in on this new bylaw introduced by the city. Elton, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time. So this is just one of those bylaws that has left a number of residents, particularly those that have been victims of crime, perplexed. Just speak to us about what prompted, in your knowledge, this move.
Now, for me, looking at this move by the city to say that, listen, yeah, we're going to bring in a bylaw prohibiting people actually posting the footage that they capture on their private cameras that's situated on their private properties, but which overlook public spaces. It can the one thing can be that the city is most probably looking at to say that maybe by posting these things, the perpetrators are aware that the police are trying to track them and is actually investigating this matter. But then one needs to look at this bylaw. With what does it, or in what does it stand in conflict with? Then one looks at Section 12 of the Constitution as well as Section 25, because people install cameras to safeguard their properties and their primary residence, but also to safeguard them as with the view of protecting their lives. And now one would ask oneself, is like, this camera, is it infringing on any of the rights that the city might feel that they have? And then you balance that against the rights of individuals. And then one has to look at, constitutionally speaking, is this bylaw reasonable and rational? And I think that on a constitutional challenge, this bylaw will fail in when a constitutional challenge is lodged by residents or people affected by this bylaw.
Yeah, because now the question is, if you do have these CCTV cameras installed in your your property, but also outside your perimeter, because we've seen that some households have cameras just outside facing the street. And some of these video footage has been used for crime fighting organizations, particularly those that are community based, and have in some instances led to successful arrests, working very closely, of course, with the security companies that operate in that particular neighborhood. But now we understand that applicants must submit detailed plans and undergo pre-evaluation processes before receiving approval. In the meantime, in the interim, what do you think is within the ambit of households in terms of the law, whilst this process continues?
Firstly, for me, it's an implementation problem for the city, because how many households in South Africa already has these cameras installed on their perimeters in their premises that overlook public spaces? Now you need to go and monitor and say, but was this a new installation, an old installation? And then does this bylaw have retrospective operation to say that a camera that was there 15 years ago must now be taken off, or 5 years ago must now be taken off? And they must come and show what is the rationale of this bylaw. And I think it will be very difficult for them to come and prove what will the rationale be. And then one needs to look at, a bylaw is like literally some of these laws that's really at the bottom, because you still have national legislation. Now you ask yourself, is this bylaw even in line with national legislation, and then eventually the Constitution? And then obviously you would find yourself to say, listen, yeah, the rationale and the justifiability of this bylaw cannot stand constitutional scrutiny. And for me, that is the problem that the city is faced with, and they need to come and show and say why these bylaws is now infringing upon a right that the city is going to actually have these bylaws in place, that this infringes upon. Because you need to show that this, what the people are doing, is infringing on your space. And obviously, when we look at the Constitution, it's a public space. And in public spaces, you are allowed to video film. There is legislation that says you can violate, you can film in public spaces. So what can the city show that saying, if I maybe film in the front of my house, what is happening there? How is it affecting the city's performance of their duties? Because you cannot tell me like, oh, I just want you to register a camera, but there's no rationale for it. Maybe you say, okay, it's in the way of essential infrastructure. That I can understand. Or it's on top of essential, but there's no essential infrastructure. And for me, the rationale that the city must, there must be procedural fairness, and there must be a rationale that stands constitutional scrutiny if the city wants to put up have these bylaws enforced.
Because
And then on top of that, who will do the enforcement?
Absolutely, because also there is that other concern of the legal costs and also just the costs associated with this bylaw. I do have in possession a document that's about 64 pages long. I have to go through it. That speaks primarily to just, CCTV cameras. I mean, the bylaw also states that the city may determine tariffs, charges, surcharges related to any aspect of the law and bylaw. One wonders how much consultation was given and provided here by the city. And just on a legal front, what should the process be in terms of giving that consultation process and then also, apply or implement this bylaw?
For me, that bylaw, if they want to charge people now for having cameras on their private property and also on the perimeter of their property, the city must show that what infrastructure support are they providing to the private citizens who has these cameras and surveillance equipment up. What infrastructure support or maintenance are they rendering? Because you can't be charging people where you don't do anything. It's like you say people must pay for a service that you're not rendering. Similar to what the city is currently having with this charge that they have on people buying electricity. That also is something that is going to be challenged soon in court, and this is one of the things that will be challenged also by the private citizens, because the city is not providing any infrastructure that help the people to actually maintain or safeguard, for that matter. So if the city say that they're going to patrol and safeguard the cameras, and in case a camera gets stolen, people will be reimbursed, then they can charge a fee. But if you don't provide any maintenance or support services for that infrastructure that is put up by private money, how can you enforce it? For me, that rationale, and again, it must be procedural fairness, and I think this is one of the things that will be hotly contested in a court of law, and the city will have difficulty with enforcing it because there's a lot of legal fees that will go into that. And also, how are you going to police it? You already don't have enough people to actually check for people that's stealing electricity. How will you now monitor people that's having cameras?
Elton, very quickly, because we have to wrap, but should this then make its way to court, how much of the court will actually weigh fundamentally why people have these cameras in the first place? I mean, the high levels of crime speak for themselves. We also have police stats that are, released every quarter that speak to the high levels of crime, particularly in as far as neighborhoods are concerned and armed robberies in these houses.
No, definitely. I think the first thing that one starts off is like Section 12, that right to actually safeguard your property and person. Section 12 of the Constitution. You have that right, and you cannot tell me a bylaw can override a right that's entrenched in the Bill of Rights. Although it's not, it's a right that can be limited, but not by a bylaw. And especially if you look at the process that was undertaken to actually come up with this nonsensical bylaw. There was no public participation. There's no involvement of the various role players. They just came up with this nonsensical bylaw that they want to actually tell people now, listen here, you have to pay tariffs and you need to get permission. That already, I think when the court goes on constitutional scrutiny to say that this process that they followed was flawed from the beginning, and they must open up a proper process to say, how are we going to implement it? What is it? And against what are you measuring it? And given our rate of crime, I don't think that any logic thinking magistrate or judge will rule in favor of the city.
Elton, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Legal analyst there, Elton Hart, just weighing in on this particular matter. The city of Johannesburg adopting a new bylaw that prohibits residents from posting CCTV videos of crime events on the internet, as Elton says that there may be some legal challenges here going forward.